Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my workbench. From where I last left off with the kit I'm working on, in case anybody doesn't remember or they forgot, I'm working on Hasegawa's 1/48 scale A6M1 Zero, the mother of all zeros. And I think the last where I left off was I had everything primed and I was going to get ready to paint. If I'm not sure, correct me. I don't know. Anyway, so here's the progress I've made so far. As you can tell here, everything has been painted, almost assembled. This is going to be ready for a gloss coat. Like I said before, my gloss coat will be using this. I will explain how to use that in a bit. But let's get back to this. As you already know, I used a red primer for the base, and it actually kind of worked out in my favor on this one. But I don't know how much in my favor. I'll have to build another Zero to get a quick comparison. How I use for the overrider frame, as I said before, I use this Tamiya XF76 green gray IJN. I gotta remember to pick up another bottle of this sometime soon, because even though I got two of them, I still want to get the bigger bottles. I feel more comfortable with them. So how I applied the Tamiya acrylic is pretty simple. I used their thinner, which is right here. Good rule of thumb if you're starting out with an airbrush, always use the whatever brand of paint you're using, always use the thinner. For example, if you're using Chester's Model Master enamel, use their enamel paint thinner. If you're same thing with the Tamiya acrylic, if you're using the acrylic paints, use their thinner. And this thinner is really, really good. I swear by it. I've used it in a couple of other paints in a pinch, but just stick with that. Anyway, I use my airbrush. I use the Badger 350 right here, which I use since it's only a single color subject. I mix the paint in a 3 parts paint to 1 part thinner ratio. Reason being is so it'll flow better and it'll flow easier instead of heavily finish out of the bottle, which is not out of the, actually, yeah. Instead of straight out of the bottle, I wanted to make sure it flowed smoothly and evenly onto the plastic, especially with the primer on. I was afraid it was going to make it rougher than it would be with the primer coat. I did this in 2 coats though. I didn't glop it on. I sprayed in 2 different directions. Like, for example, like the wings. First coat, I sprayed them horizontally. Let it dry. Once it was fully dry, sprayed it again, and this way following the airflow in the second coat. And I wanted to have a more uniform look to it, which is what I was looking for. And it worked. The cowling, as I said before, I used, if I can find it, no, I cannot at the moment. I used AK Interactive's blue-black cowling. It don't look so much blue this time around. Initially, when I sprayed it, it had a little bit of a touch of blue to it. It was kind of weird looking. But back to the actual color in this one. When I first sprayed this, it had kind of a weird lavender look to it, partly because the paint was thin, but it was also kind of interesting. Now I can understand why somebody would report a mauve float plane running around during World War II, because of the red oxide primer undercoating, which is under the actual paint color, and I can see why. But as for the gear wells, I used the blue-green finish from Life Color, which is, once again, somewhere. Don't know where it is. We'll not get into it. You tell it was under here. I used it for in here. I also did the landing gear doors, the insides of them, as well as a couple other metal parts I'll be gluing into the landing gear. As for the landing gear themselves, I showed you the last time. I used semi-gloss black, and for the oleos, if you can see in here, there is a silver area, which is, when it lands, it squishes. And I also got the tires done, which is over here. That's one side, and that is the other. I basically masked them off, painted them with Gunsango's tire black. Now, these took a little longer to dry than with Tamiya, even though they're alcohol-based. For some reason, the formula from Gunsango's tends to take a little, even though it's flat, for some reason it tends to take a little longer to dry. Why, I don't know, but once you spray it, leave it alone, because if you touch it, it is a rather delicate finish and you'll ruin it. I'll explain about these paints in future videos and which ones I use and whatnot. As I said before, oh, that reminds me, the decking in the back once again, AK Interactive. I used Mitsubishi Interior Green for that, since the cockpit itself is spray painted a Mitsubishi Interior Green. Once everything was said and done, I did my assembling. I put the radiator in here, as you can tell. Once again, second prototype. I glued this on, but before I glued those on, I glued the cowling on, which was the engine first. Matter of fact, I'll show you here. The engine was surprisingly easy to get it to glue to the fuselage, much like the later Model Zero engines. Cowling, I was kind of worried that it wasn't going to fit too well if I tried to paint it, or I was going to try to assemble it. It actually went together better than I thought, especially once I put the radiator scoop on, and it actually worked rather well. I also had to paint the exhausts for the engine. As you can see here, they're rather small and tiny, but if you see where my finger is, you'll see where they are. I painted those burnt metal, filled the exhaust holes flat black. That worked out. Pitted tube is silver. Now, if you notice, there is no lights in the wingtips. That's because they're clear parts and they are separate from the rest of the airframe. So I'll probably glue those in. I'll paint them according. Red on the port side, green on the starboard side. I'll do the same with the lights on the wings. You can see one, probably two. I run my finger over them. My humble apologies, but it gives you an idea where they are. As for the underside, as you can tell, tail wheel's been painted. Left this alone. Painted the wheel and whatever else. A little bit of aluminum. See, like everything? Yes, sir. Strike. I didn't need to fill in any gaps on this one because nobody's going to notice. But that's the extent of what I've got done so far. Now, as I said, I'm going to be painting this in a clear coat finish, which is this. This is, like I said, this is literally a liquid acrylic. And it's mostly used for like linoleum or tile floors or the like. Most of the time it's for the wax floors or so on and so forth. It's pretty simple. If you're familiar with it, if you use it on the floor, it's pretty simple. You pour on, rub it across with a mop, let it dry for a few hours, and it should be good to go. Well, some modeler found out you could use this as a clear coat, and it's kind of tricky to use, but it's also simple to use. It's a little tricky because if you're using it through an airbrush, you can't flood it on like paints, you can't flood it on. But if you set the pressure right, and set your nozzle right, you could just dust it on with a couple of coats. Some people would rather have a mirror finish, try to avoid the orange peel effect. You don't have to thin it. There's no need to thin the clear. There's no need to thin this, but if you want to slow down drying time and try to get a more even finish, you can. You're a better man than I am, Gumpington, because I just take it right out of the bottle and I just put 2 coats and I leave it alone. That's it. Yeah, I'm a weird dude. I let the paint dry for the past couple of days with good reason. So the clear coat the future finish will not interfere with the paint. This is especially important for enamels because, as you know, with enamels, there's more fumes and other chemicals in those paints you got to concern yourself with. And you already know you got to be careful when you use acrylics over enamels or something, because it could affect the paint, which, strangely enough, if it's not fully cured. It's not like acrylics where if it's dry to the touch, you can paint over it. You can't do that with enamel because you can run the risk of lifting the paint up when you put a new coat over it. So you got to be really careful. It's the same effect with the future. If you touch it too quickly, you could run the risk of ruining the paint job underneath, and leads to more trouble. And then there's going to be removing paint, which is another whole story. You don't want. No, it's a mess. And I've got some stories about that, but we're going to get back to what else we're doing here. Once I use the future floor finish, once I spray the coats on that I need, that I'm spraying, I leave it alone for a couple days. This way I'll let the clear coat fully cure and harden, then I'll apply my decals. Now, the really big advantage about this stuff is, what I like about it is, it's actually tougher than using an acrylic gloss coat. It's actually a lot better because even though it's not like it's similar to an acrylic paint, it's not. And like I said, this was meant for floors, like tough, high traffic and everything. And the good part about it is it can withstand oil washes, it can withstand enamel washes much, much better than an acrylic gloss coat can, or even an enamel gloss coat can, easily. But don't try to overdo it though when you're doing a wash. You spray, you put your wash on, wipe it off, that's it. You don't want to get out of hand with it. But that's the good part about it. And also, if you want to add flat to it, give it a flat finish, you can always get the flat base from Tamaya, which really isn't a flat coat. It's really just it's just a bunch of goop in a bottle where you just pour a little bit at a time. It works great. It really does. It's like I said, it's good stuff. And I haven't picked up any bottles of gloss clear in 15 years, I think, ever since I picked up this first bottle, ever. Actually, I've had this one for 10. It's showing its age, it's a little yellow, but it's really a non-factor because it goes on clear anyway, and it works great on stuff like this. Otherwise, as for the Zero itself, everything's going to be ready for a clear coat. I'll let it sit for a couple days, and eventually I'll start decaling. And that's all I got for now, and I will, in any upcoming videos, you see my stash in the back here. This is an all new shelf. My wife picked up the shelf for me. Thank you, honey. And I had to put all my models on here. If you ever have pique interest, and if you see anything on there, pique your interest, I'll pop it out. We'll open it up, we'll talk about it, and then I'll put it back on the shelf, and it's up to you whether you want to buy it or not. So, this is what I got for now. Take it easy, guys. Happy modeling. I'm going to finish this up, and I will talk to you again soon.